This webinar on cross-border selling will be hosted by Brian Coyle, Chief Commercial Officer at Kantan MT. And just to give him a quick introduction, Brian has 25 plus years experience in senior sales and marketing management roles in a range of industries and across a number of markets, including the US, the UK, and Europe. Now, without further delay, I'll pass on the microphone to Brian, who will discuss how automated translation can help to overcome the e-commerce language barrier and successfully sell across multilingual borders. Brian, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Polly, and hello to everybody, and welcome to the webinar. Thank you indeed for taking the time out today to join us. Without further ado, I'll just get cracking here. So we move that. There we go. Okay, so cross-border selling and breaking the language barrier with automated translation particularly. Why has automated translation become more and more of a feature in the world of e-commerce localization? Well, there's a few reasons for that. Obviously, it's the demand for content, the demand for service from consumers and customers who are demanding service anytime and anywhere, and indeed on any device. So obviously, with the advent of mobile, with the advent of always on 24/7, customer demands are such that they have to be serviced all of the time. As a result of that, of course, the demands placed on e-commerce organizations are to translate more content, to generate more content, and to translate it faster and for less. And these three pressures are pressures that our clients are regularly reporting back to us as the realities of their business and the realities of their localization workflows. Similarly, of course, the three issues that key success factors, if you like, that are required by e-commerce companies are language, international delivery service, and currency switching. And where do we get those three key success factors from? Well, in a study produced by the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences and published at the e-commerce summit in Barcelona recently, the study determined that things like language, things like providing an efficient delivery and return service, and providing a currency switching feature on your website were absolutely the most important factors in e-commerce success and in cross-border success. So so language, of course, is the main topic that we're going to cover today. Similarly, in the same study, they reported that, in fact, across Europe, there's an awful lot of room for improvement by online vendors and e-tailers in their efforts to sell across borders. So the average share of cross-border web visitors per country was only 23%. Pretty low. And indeed, if you looked at, they reckon some countries it's down to well below, 3 or 4% of cross-border web visitors. So indeed, there is an opportunity to improve there. And in fact, what we're going to show you today is how machine translation can help with that process. So what is machine translation? Well, effectively, you're taking what they call statistical machine translations, and building customized machine translation engines specifically designed for your business. So this means that we take your training data, your special terminology, your bilingual pre-translated data, and we use that to build this statistical machine translation. It's a fusion of a number of different technologies, including translation memory technology and machine translation and rules. And as a result of that, we can create highly customized translation engines which are specified for your business. So they will perform translation that is particularly tailored to your content to deliver the kind of terminology that you use in your business and the kind of fluency that you demand. So that in a nutshell is what CantanMT does. It's highly scalable, it's cloud-based, it's subscription-based, so it's inexpensive to operate, and so on. And because of the success we've had with CantanMT, we've actually managed to translate for our clients 7.3 billion words in our short life. We've only been going commercially for about 2.5, 3 years, and in that time we've translated 7.3 billion words. Our clients have uploaded nearly half a billion training words, and we've got 9,500 engines on CantanMT. So we've got a lot of people very actively building these tailored translation engines for their businesses. So with CantanMT, there's two types of workflow. So the first is a very traditional workflow, a localization workflow, where you use your translation memories, that is your existing translations, in the form of bilingual translations. And for your new translations, you leverage your translation memory to avoid replication, to avoid translating new words. So you basically say, well, what have we translated before? Let's match off what we've translated before with what we're trying to translate now, and let's not retranslate that. So that's basically leveraging your translation memory. And then you take that output from that, so basically all the new words that still require translation, and you can apply those through CantanMT customized engine. And then you can take the output from CantanMT and give it to a human to post-edit, in fact, to review and to correct and to finesse, so that it's absolutely perfect. And that's the kind of the traditional workflow of translation memory plus machine translation plus human post-editing. But what has become a reality now is actually fully automated translation. And we have some clients who are using CantanMT to publish fully automated translated translation output from CantanMT and publish it directly to their websites. And what they've done there is they've built very, very highly customized engines, and sometimes in certain cases very large engines. They're translating structured content. It might not work for all different types of content, but certainly for structured content like product descriptions and so on. And before they release any of these engines into production, they're applying very strict quality control data processes to their engines to make sure that they're absolutely up to scratch and ready for production. So those are the two types of workflow, and in fact, for e-commerce, both of those different workflows can apply. So what we're going to talk about today is how automated translation then can be used in e-commerce to overcome some of these language barriers. So for instance, talking about this auto-usable translation that I've just described in that fully automated workflow, using machine translation to translate faster and to get to the market faster, using machine translation to leverage that back catalog that's been sitting there on your database that you don't necessarily exploit anymore, but that's still got potential, using machine translation to access more markets, more languages, to reduce returns from customers, to improve your return rate, to improve call deflection, so that you've got fewer calls going to your expensive call centers, to build and improve productivity in your translation workflows. And then finally, just the last one there, to look at maybe intranet translation and how that can be applied. And that may not necessarily apply to e-commerce, but certainly to an intranet in your business that can improve collaboration if you use translation. So kicking off then, just very quickly, we talked about this auto-usable translation. So this is now a reality. Okay, so for e-commerce applications where you have product descriptions, and if you have a huge online product catalog with literally hundreds of thousands of products, you can build a very highly customized MT engine. You can translate directly all those product descriptions and publish them directly to your websites. So in this case here, we have a client. They translated over 2 billion words, all of which were published directly to the web. Content was generated by their users, so the product descriptions, and they had a process of language quality review, as I mentioned earlier, a strict quality control process and a retraining process, so the engines were constantly updated. But what they were able to do was they were able to publish literally product descriptions for millions of products. They were able to access new markets, and they were able to generate more sales. So what they did was they saved literally 500,000 post-editing days because they avoided the need for post-editing, for human post-editing, human correction. So that is a reality now with the product, with the service like Kantan MT. And for me, it's probably one of the most powerful e-commerce applications of machine translation. Using machine translation then to access the markets faster, and this is a case study which is available. In this case, there was a catalogue of automotive components, and it was a 300,000 word catalogue. And what they wanted to do was translate the catalogue into 3 languages and have a scalable solution that could roll out into other languages. So in fact what they did was they completed the first 3 languages in 28 days, and then they rolled out to additional 2 languages in another 15 days. So that was the more traditional application of machine translation with human post-editing. But what Kantan MT was able to deliver was an improvement in that post-editing productivity of between 30 to 60%. And the reason there's a scale of between 30 and 60 is because slightly different languages, I think in this case they were Scandinavian languages, so different languages delivered different levels of productivity. But essentially what the client was able to do in this case was kick off their sales in 5 markets in only 43 days. So they saved a huge amount of time, and obviously quicker to market means quicker sales. Looking then at the third application is back catalog leverage. Now a lot of e-commerce, e-retailers and e-commerce vendors will very often be sitting on back catalogs. And what we're suggesting here is that if you have a back catalog of say 20,000 products, 20,000 SKU, stock keeping units, with an average value of €70 and an average gross margin of 40%. Assuming as well that you had 200 words to translate per SKU, if you wanted to access new markets with this back catalogue of products, that's a total of 4 million words. So effectively, using machine translation, you could easily translate that 4 million words into 15 languages in 12 months. And picking the right types of markets, you could easily access an additional 350 million customers with that back catalogue. So all you would need to recover your costs on that within 12 months is to get a sales of 15% of that catalog value per year. So that would engender a return on your investment in only 12 months effectively. And after that, of course, everything is profit. So very often, as I say, e-retailers sitting on back catalogs, these are real assets, but the cost to translate them with humans is just too expensive. But using machine translation, it can be done much more inexpensively, and that allows you to access these markets that otherwise wouldn't be open to you. And again, very, very low take-up of this back catalogue in terms of sales will recover the investment. So a very useful application there using machine translation. Again, using machine translation to access more markets. So with a system like Canton MT, we've got about 760 language pairs, and we're adding more languages all the time. And this includes, double byte languages, Asian languages, and so on, some of the long tail languages, regional languages, and so on. And looking at this chart here, you can see that if you look at the vertical axis there, that's suggesting that in these 5 markets here, that some of these markets are going to experience real growth in income between 2015 and 2030 of almost 100% in the case of, for instance, the case of India and indeed China. So that kind of medium income growth is delivering what they're calling now is a middle class potential. So these 5 markets alone, believe it or not, will generate huge middle class potential, but a total market, cumulative market of 3 billion people. So using machine translation, it's now possible to take significant cost out of accessing these markets because you can localize much more inexpensively into these markets. So systems like Canton MT, we now support Hindi, for example. It's possible to really get into these markets at a cost-effective rate. Using the machine translation then to reduce your returns. Product returns, obviously, as every e-commerce company and every vendor knows, returns are the bane of their lives. And indeed, Internet Retailer magazine, the online magazine, suggests that e-commerce returns can range from anywhere from 0.2%, if you're very lucky, up to 30% of sales, which is quite incredible. So if you assume that a particular e-retail site has a turnover of 100 million euro, that they're experiencing 10% returns, which is not unrealistic, that's basically 10 million euro of lost revenue every year. Plus you can add to that all of the handling costs that are incurred in handling returns and so on. Now, what you can do is you can use machine translation to translate more content. So to use more content to describe your products and to reduce buyer confusion and to reduce buyer errors. You can also use some of the technology that's available on a system like Canton MT, such as NAIR technology, that's named entity recognition technology, to localize into weight, sizes and measures and get that absolutely correct and avoid errors in that area. And that can help reduce returns, because if people have a clearer idea of what it is they're buying, they're less likely to make mistakes and have to return products. And based on this very, very simple case study here, or use case here, a 10% reduction in returns would capture an extra 1 million in revenue and save on all those handling costs. So it's not difficult to see how it could be argued internally that the application of machine translation to translate more content and to translate better content to reduce returns could be a very cost-effective solution. The next one I want to talk about then is just the idea of translating more content. So again, using Canton MT description. In one 24-hour period, we translated over 135 million words. Now, again, that was for a very, very large client. It was for an e-commerce client. But that saved them an extraordinary amount of money, 54,000 translator days. So, there wouldn't have been the translators available to translate that content in the first instance. So it's not, doing translators out of a job or anything like that, but they were able to translate this content at a fraction of the cost that they would have if those translators were available and had they used translators to translate that content. So MT can literally translate at a fraction of a cent per word. So I would urge those e-commerce companies who consider that they have too much content or the content's too expensive to translate, to reconsider that in view of the availability of machine translation. So this is an interesting one as well, another kind of a use case, and it's using translated content to to reduce your call deflection, so to reduce calls that are going to your expensive call center. So again, if you imagine a call center is open 365 days a year, they're handling 500 calls a day, and to handle each call it costs, say, €10 per call. And that's a figure that we've got from callcenterhelper.com, which is an industry website. So by translating more of the content, like your self-service support content, your technical content, all of that, again, it will vary depending on what kind of products you're selling. But deflecting just 15% of those calls by providing that better translated content and more translated content will reduce a total of 27,000 calls. So that's a saving of €270,000 per annum. So again, not difficult to see that you only need a very, very small improvement in call deflection to generate the return on investment that you required to cover the cost of your machine translation. So it's something that I would urge again e-commerce companies to consider. And finally, the final application, as I've mentioned, is for, say, an intranet. And this is really the application that I've chosen here, which might kind of, give rise to some ideas for your own internal collaboration and intranet usage. But in this case, it's using machine translation for translation of internal content for B2B sales, business-to-business sales. So in this case, we're talking about, say, a global consulting firm who are operating in 3 or 4 very specific industry verticals. So let's say banking and finance, pharmaceutical, medical, and so on. And very often, they'll receive a large number of requests for proposals from clients, from governments, and so on, in all of the different markets that they're operating in. So this is a way of using machine translation to get a gisted translation to get the meaning of this RFP very quickly, so that they can very quickly collaborate and decide whether to go or not to go for a particular RFP. They don't need to waste too much time on it. It allows knowledge sharing, because again, if the company has a knowledge-specific or vertical-specific knowledge in one market that's applicable to this vertical in another market, they can easily translate that and share it online and discuss the applicability of this particular bid and tender and so on, whether they should go for it. So by using machine translation, it's very easy to share data across borders, basically, and to get a better understanding of that data internally and make better business decisions. So that's another kind of an application for machine translation, which might just give rise to some ideas that you might have. The important thing then in all of this, in applying all of these different processes to your business, is to consider how quality can be managed and determined. Because obviously we've spoken about the traditional form of machine translation with human post-editing, but also fully automated translation. So quality is very important. And with Kantan MT, there are a number of different ways to control quality. So we have what we call automated scores. So these are the blue score, the F measure, and the TER score. I won't go into too much detail, but basically they provide very, very quick and automated estimations of the quality of the engines that you build, the translation engines that you build. So very quickly you can get an idea of how effective these engines will be in translating your content. We also have build analytics, which actually breaks down by segment and provides those quality scores by segment or by sentence. And again, we have tools to help automate the whole linguistic quality review process. So I mentioned there one of our clients, e-commerce provider, underwent 3 or 4 different iterations of quality control for their engines, and they used linguistic quality review. So, again, that's putting out a sample of the content from the engines out to humans to correct and translate and improve the quality of the output, and then feed it back into the engine. And by undergoing a number of iterations, you can really improve the quality of the engine. But a word of warning, what I would say is ultimately it's the customer that decides. And again, very often what our clients do is they build their own KPIs for language quality. So what I mean by that is, whilst they go through the linguistic quality review and they correct syntax and language errors and spelling errors and all that normal linguistic quality review, they also use what might be called customized KPIs. So a very simple question would be, would this translation enable you to buy this product? You know, does this translation adequately describe the product for you? And by using those kind of customized KPIs, you can very quickly get a customer's view of how that translation is performing for you or likely to perform. So, as I would say, at the end of the day, it's the customer that decides, and there's no reason why with the workflow using MT that the customer can't be included in that process. In every e-commerce business, there's a number of influencers and decision makers. So I understand that whilst the head of localization or the localization manager may have a number of ideas on how to improve localization in the organization, it's also important to take into account the demands and the constraints and the requirements of the business that these decision makers and influencers have to deal with. So, head of operations, call center managers, head of customer service, head of globalization, international business development managers, and even the head of finance. All of these people need to be included in any discussion that you might have internally about how machine translation can help with the localization process and help the business to achieve overall business goals. So that's it from me today. I hope that some of those ideas and applications helped you today and helped you to see how machine translation can really help overcome the language barrier in e-commerce. It's a technology that's improving all the time, and it's a technology that can really help take the cost out of your localization and your translation efforts. And not only that, but it can actually help you achieve your business goals, because now you can access more markets, you can access markets faster, you can translate more content, you can leverage content that previously was maybe too expensive to translate, and so on. So thank you very much indeed, and I'll hand back to Polomé now, who can help deal with some questions that you might have.
Right, brilliant. Thank you, Brian. That was absolutely great. We did great with time as well. And let's see if we have any questions. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the right navigation pane. All right, the first question here, Brian, is somebody asking, I want to start using MT in my workflow. How long will it take me to get started?
Okay, so what we mentioned was that when you want to start with something like Kantan MT, it's very, very quick. It's very, very fast, and that's what we mentioned earlier on as well. So traditionally, machine translation has been slow and cumbersome to use, but now, in fact, you can get started very, very quickly. In fact, we have a library of stock data that you can add to your own data to help you build an engine faster. But not only that, in certain domains we have pre-built engines that are already up and running. All you have to do is add your own training data, and that will help you get started. But generally speaking, Kantan MT can build at the rate of about 6 million words per hour. So in fact, it's incredibly fast to build. Whereas it used to take literally days or even weeks to build an engine, it can be now done in a matter of hours.
Brilliant. All right, we have another question. The next question is, how do you deal with storage of translation memory of trans-created text? For instance, let's say, killing two birds with one stone. How would you deal with that? in, let's say, some other language.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. Well, the first, with transcreated text, it's quite difficult, and in fact, you know, they would it's always suggested that with machine translation and that you avoid using idioms, etc. However, in the case of transcreation, what you could do is you could use terminology, for instance, terminology sets, so that a certain phrase or a term will always be translated in a certain way. I'm just looking here at and so kill two birds with one stone in translated, catch two pigeons with one bean in Italian. Okay, so yeah, so the recommendation would be to avoid idioms, but what you could do is you could use that kind of terminology to preserve those translations.
All right, Brian, kind of just following up on your same answer then, can you have a TM of idioms then?
So can you have a TM of idioms? Just thinking about that now. Yes, I guess you could. I would need to check how that would be handled by our, say, statistical machine translation. No, it's okay. But I would need to check on how that would be managed in a statistical machine translation setting. So. You know, statistical machine translation is a popularity contest, so it works on finding the best translation based on what has already been loaded into the engine. So it picks the most likely correct translation. But your terminology will always be preserved. So that's why I thought maybe idioms could be used in using the terminology. Data, but what I can do is, yeah, I can take that away and have a think about that and come back to you on that if that's okay. That's a good question.
Brilliant, thanks, Brian. Right, okay, so the next question is, can MT deal with legal differences, for example, superlative claims in English, and how the legal differences would come? So the example here is, let's say we say the best car in the world, but that is illegal, saying that is illegal in China. So can we deal with that difference?
Well, I mean, I think the way you'd have to deal with that is through post-editing. You know, that would have to be corrected in the post-editing process, because you know, you really don't want to have claims or text out there that's illegal in any way. So that would be my recommendation in that case.
Okay, Brian, we have time for just one last question there. So I think we'll deal with this question. How does the pricing for your platform work? Do you want to just give a quick idea of that?
Okay, yeah, so as I said, we're subscription based, so you pay, there's no upfront payment. You can sign up and get started straight away. It's a monthly payment, starts at, you know, literally a couple of €100 for, say, 5 engines. That's five language pairs. And then there's a small cost per word for the number of source words that you translate, and it's literally fractions of a cent per word, and it's as simple as that.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, Brian. Thanks a lot. And once again, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. We'll send you a recording for this. And if you have any further question, please feel free to mail either Brian directly, that is prianc@contentmt.com, or info@contentmt.com. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.